Welcome. Before you drift off to sleep tonight, please take a gentle moment to subscribe to the channel. Tonight, we are journeying back to Edwardian England to spend a quiet evening with a lady-in-waiting, anticipating the first snowfall settling on a cottage roof. So settle in, pull your blankets close, and let us begin. A glowing brass lantern swings gently from a wrought iron hook beside a heavy oak door, casting warm pools of yellow light against the rough-hewn stone of a country cottage. It is late November in the year 1906, and the air holds that unmistakable, crisp stillness that speaks of coming snow. Lady Clara, having spent the long autumn attending to the Queen at the Grand Estate, has retreated to her own private cottage on the edge of the woods. She steps across the threshold, feeling the immense, comforting embrace of solitude. The heavy wooden door clicks shut behind her, sealing away the winter chill, leaving only the promise of a peaceful, uninterrupted evening within these safe and beloved walls. A pair of worn leather riding gloves rests gently upon a polished mahogany entryway table, catching the faint reflection of a nearby candle. Lady Clara slowly unpins her wide-brimmed felt hat, lifting it from her soft, swept-up hair with a gentle sigh of relief. The day's formalities are behind her now. There are no schedules to keep, no grand dinners to attend, only the quiet rhythm of her own private evening. She unwraps a thick, woven woolen scarf from her neck, the fabric smelling faintly of crisp pine needles and wood smoke from her walk through the darkening forest. The silence in the cottage is not empty, but rather filled with a welcoming warmth, a hushed anticipation of the long winter night ahead. She hangs her heavy velvet cloak on an iron peg, letting the rich, dark green fabric settle against the wooden wainscoting. A small, sturdy stone hearth stands at the center of the cozy parlor, its iron grate waiting patiently for the evening fire. Clara kneels upon a braided woolen rug, her silk skirts rustling softly against the floorboards. She reaches for the kindling box, her fingers brushing against the rough, fragrant bark of dry birch logs. With precise, practiced movements, she arranges the twigs and newspaper, striking a long wooden match against the stone. A tiny blue flame springs into existence, dancing at the tip of the wood before catching the paper. The fire blooms gracefully, casting long, flickering shadows across the floral wallpaper. The gentle crackle of the dry wood fills the room, a soothing, rhythmic sound that immediately begins to chase away the evening chill. She watches the golden light reflect against the polished copper coal scuttle. A plush velvet armchair in a deep shade of midnight blue sits invitingly close to the newly lit fire, draped with a hand-knitted shawl. Clara rises from the hearth, brushing a stray fleck of ash from her long skirt, and moves slowly towards the kitchen. The wooden floorboards, worn smooth by years of footsteps, offer a faint, familiar creak beneath her leather boots. In the adjoining room, the kitchen is bathed in the soft, bruised purple light of twilight filtering through the leaded glass windows. She reaches for a taper candle, touching it to the parlor hearth before carrying the small, bobbing flame into the kitchen. She touches the fire to the wick of a glass oil lamp, watching as the warm, honey-colored light expands to illuminate the rustic wooden counters and the neatly arranged rows of ceramic jars. A large, gleaming copper kettle sits upon the black iron stove, reflecting the warm amber glow of the oil lamp. Clara pumps the handle at the ceramic sink, watching the clear, cold water splash into a porcelain pitcher. She transfers the water into the heavy copper kettle, enjoying the satisfying weight of it in her hands, and places it squarely over the hottest part of the stove. The scent of dried lavender and rosemary, hanging in small bundles from the ceiling beams, mingles beautifully with the metallic warmth of the iron stove. She opens a wooden tea caddy, inhaling the deep, rich aroma of Ceylon tea leaves, a comforting fragrance that speaks of distant lands and quiet afternoons. She spoons the dark, curled leaves into a delicate silver tea strainer, the metal clinking softly against the porcelain of her favorite teacup. A delicate porcelain teacup, painted with tiny, intricate sprays of cornflowers and green vines, rests upon a matching saucer. As Clara waits for the water to boil, she steps toward the window, pulling back the heavy, cream-colored linen curtains. The sky outside has turned a deep, slate grey, the heavy clouds hanging low over the skeletal branches of the oak trees. The air beyond the glass is perfectly still, holding its breath before the impending snow. The glass pane feels cold against her fingertips, a sharp contrast to the gathering warmth of the kitchen behind her. She traces a small circle on the condensation of the windowpane, looking out into the tranquil, dormant garden. The old stone birdbath is already rimed with a delicate layer of white frost, catching the last pale light of the fading day. A round wooden dining table, scrubbed clean and pale over the years, holds a simple ceramic butter dish and a loaf of fresh bread. The kettle on the stove begins to hum, a low, steady vibration that slowly builds into a gentle, singing whistle. Clara lifts the kettle with a thick, quilted pot holder, pouring the steaming water over the tea leaves. A cloud of fragrant steam rises into the cool kitchen air, carrying the comforting scent of bergamot and earthy black tea. She places a woven cozy over the teapot, allowing the brew to steep in perfect, undisturbed warmth. Taking a small, serrated knife with a bone handle, she cuts a thick slice from the crusty brown loaf, the sound of the bread yielding to the blade adding to the symphony of quiet evening noises. A small silver butter knife rests beside a pat of creamy, pale yellow butter, speckled with a few grains of sea salt. Clara spreads the soft butter across the freshly cut slice of bread, watching it melt slightly into the porous, soft crumb. She carries her plate and the steaming teacup back into the parlor, where the fire has now matured into a steady, crackling blaze. She settles into the deep velvet armchair, pulling the knitted woolen shawl over her shoulders. The heat from the teacup permeates the porcelain, warming her palms as she cradles it in her hands. She takes a slow, appreciative sip, letting the hot, flavorful tea soothe her throat and warm her from the inside out. The simple supper is a luxurious comfort, entirely her own, free from the silver service and formal protocols of the palace. A pair of embroidered velvet slippers sits neatly beside the hearth, their toes pointing toward the warm embers. Clara finishes her tea, placing the delicate cup and saucer onto a small wooden side table. She unlaces her sturdy leather boots, slipping her stockinged feet into the soft, warm velvet of the slippers. The relief is instant and absolute, a physical release of the day's burdens. She leans her head back against the plush upholstery of the armchair, closing her eyes for a moment. The heat from the fire washes over her face, a gentle, radiant wave that relaxes the tiny muscles around her eyes and jaw. The cottage is wrapped in an exquisite, profound silence, broken only by the soft shifting of logs settling into the ash. A tall grandfather clock, encased in polished oak, stands in the corner of the parlor, its brass pendulum swinging in a slow, hypnotic arc. Listen to the steady, rhythmic ticking of the clock. Tick. Tock. It is the heartbeat of the cottage, a gentle reminder that time here moves slowly, patiently. Allow your own breathing to match this unhurried pace. Draw the air in slowly, feeling the warmth of your own sanctuary, and release it gently, letting go of any lingering thoughts of the day. You are safe. You are warm. The world outside may be cold and preparing for winter, but in here, there is only comfort, light, and stillness. Let the gentle crackle of the hearth and the slow ticking of the clock guide you deeper into a state of absolute, peaceful rest. A small wooden writing desk stands beneath the parlor window, its surface neatly arranged with glass inkwells and a silver letter opener. Clara rises from her chair, moving with a languid grace, and approaches the desk. She lights a slender beeswax candle in a brass holder, the small flame illuminating a stack of pale, cream-wove letters tied with a faded pink silk ribbon. She unties the ribbon, the silk slipping softly through her fingers, and selects the topmost letter. It is from her dearest friend, Beatrice, another lady-in-waiting who has journeyed to her family home in the Scottish Highlands. The paper is thick and rich, the ink a faded sepia, filled with elegant, looping handwriting. Clara unfolds the heavy paper, the sound crisp and clean in the quiet room. A pair of silver-rimmed reading glasses sits atop a folded piece of blotting paper, catching the candlelight. Clara perches on the edge of a tapestry-covered stool, smoothing the letter flat against the wooden desk. She reads Beatrice's words, a gentle smile touching her lips. Beatrice writes of quiet mornings walking the moors, of gathering dried heather, and of the peaceful monotony of the long winter evenings. Clara can almost smell the crisp Highland air and the peat fires through the delicate loops of her friend's handwriting. The connection they share, forged in the busy halls of the royal estate, feels intimately present here in the quiet cottage. The letter is a tether to a kindred spirit, a comforting reminder of enduring friendship across the miles of frost-covered English countryside. A delicate, lace-edged handkerchief is tucked into the sleeve of Clara's soft woolen bodice, emitting a faint fragrance of violet water. She carefully folds the letter, returning it to the stack, and reties the pink silk ribbon with a neat, precise bow. The act of reading has grounded her, centering her thoughts on the beauty of a quiet, contemplative life. She runs her hand over the polished surface of the desk, feeling the smooth grain of the wood beneath her fingertips. The desk has belonged to her family for generations, and every scratch and ink stain tells a silent story of letters written, diaries kept, and quiet moments stolen in the fading light. She blows gently on the beeswax candle, watching the tiny wisp of white smoke curl upwards towards the ceiling, disappearing into the shadows. A heavy, woven tapestry hangs upon the far wall, depicting a scene of a verdant forest and a quiet stream, its colors muted and soft in the dim light. Clara turns her attention to the small valise she brought from the main estate, resting on a wooden chest near the stairs. The leather of the bag is supple and well-oiled, the brass clasps cold to the touch. She undoes the buckles, the metal clicking softly, and opens the valise. Inside, neatly folded with tissue paper, are the garments of her private life. Gone are the stiff corsets and heavily beaded evening gowns. Instead, she lifts out a soft, brushed cotton nightgown, its high collar edged with delicate eyelet lace. She presses the soft fabric against her cheek, relishing the simple, unpretentious comfort of the cotton. A stack of freshly laundered linens, smelling of sunlight and lavender soap, rests within the open wooden trunk. Clara carefully unpacks her belongings, placing a stack of cambric petticoats and soft woolen stockings into the drawers of a small oak dresser. The rhythmic, repetitive motion of unfolding and arranging her clothing is deeply soothing, a mindful meditation in domesticity. She smooths the wrinkles from a beautiful, plum-colored velvet dressing gown, shaking it out gently before hanging it on a wooden hanger behind the bedroom door. Each piece of clothing is handled with care and respect, an appreciation for the fine materials and the skilled hands that crafted them. The bedroom, situated at the top of a short flight of stairs, begins to feel truly hers, inhabited and warm. A large brass bedstead, its posts polished to a mirror shine, dominates the small, cozy bedchamber under the eaves. Clara smooths the heavy, white linen sheets over the mattress, pulling them taut and folding the corners with practiced precision. The linens are cool and crisp, waiting to offer comfort at the end of the night. Over the sheets, she layers a thick, feather-filled eiderdown, encased in a floral cotton cover that mirrors the blooms in her summer garden. Finally, she drapes a heavy, hand-stitched patchwork quilt across the foot of the bed. The quilt is a masterpiece of salvaged fabric scraps of silk, velvet, and wool, pieced together by her grandmother. Running her hands over the varied textures, Clara feels a profound connection to the women in her family who sat by the fire, stitching warmth and beauty into the world. A small, oval mirror with a silver-plated frame sits atop a charming dressing table, reflecting the soft glow of an oil lamp. Clara stands before the glass, her reflection soft and slightly blurred at the edges in the low light. She reaches for a silver-backed hairbrush, its bristles made of fine, stiff boar hair. With slow, rhythmic strokes, she begins to brush out her long, dark hair. The brush pulls gently at her scalp, a deeply relaxing sensation that releases the tension held tight in her temples. The soft, sweeping sound of the bristles moving through her hair fills the small room, a quiet, personal symphony of self-care. She counts the strokes silently in her mind, a habit from childhood, finding peace in the predictable, repetitive motion. A facete glass bottle filled with pale pink rosewater stands beside a silver hairpin tray, its stopper reflecting the lamplight. Clara pauses her brushing to unstopper the bottle, tipping a few precious drops of the fragrant water onto her fingertips. She presses her hand gently to her temples and the pulse points at her wrists, inhaling the sweet, pure scent of summer roses. The fragrance is incredibly potent, a distilled memory of June afternoon spent walking through the Queen's spectacular walled gardens. The floral scent mingles with the smell of the burning lamp oil and the faint, dusty aroma of the old wooden floorboards, creating a sensory tapestry that is uniquely, perfectly Edwardian. She replaces the glass stopper with a delicate clink, feeling refreshed and profoundly calm. A pair of knitted woolen stockings, dyed a deep shade of forest green, are rolled neatly and placed in the top drawer of the dresser. Clara finishes her evening toilette, braiding her hair into a single, thick plait that rests heavily over her shoulder. She unfastens the tiny pearl buttons of her bodice, the repetitive, delicate task requiring a quiet focus. The garments of the day are laid over the back of a wooden chair, to be brushed and aired in the morning. She slips the soft cotton nightgown over her head, the cool fabric billowing gently before settling around her ankles. She pulls the plum-colored velvet dressing gown around her shoulders, tying the silk sash at her waist. The heavy velvet feels like a protective embrace against the cooling night air. A plain, white ceramic hot water bottle, encased in a knitted woolen cover, rests on the washstand waiting to be filled. Notice the slow, gentle rhythm of your own heart as the cottage settles into the night. The day is done, the chores are complete, and there is nowhere else you need to be. Feel the imaginary weight of a heavy velvet robe wrapping around your own shoulders, holding in the warmth. Let the muscles in your back and neck soften, sinking into the mattress beneath you. The world is spinning slowly outside, but within this quiet space, time is standing still. Breathe in the scent of rosewater and wood smoke, and breathe out any remaining worries. You are protected, you are peaceful, and sleep is waiting for you just around the corner. A woven wicker basket, filled with colorful skeins of embroidery silk, sits on the floor beside the velvet armchair in the parlor. Clara returns down the short flight of stairs, the soft soles of her slippers making no sound on the wooden treads. The fire has burned down to a magnificent bed of glowing red and orange embers, radiating an intense, steady heat into the room. She retrieves a small, wooden embroidery hoop from the basket, the linen fabric stretched drum-tight across its frame. Upon the pale linen, the outline of a delicate William Morris-inspired trailing vine is sketched in faint pencil. She threads a fine steel needle with a length of shimmering, emerald green silk, holding it up to the light of the oil lamp to guide the thread through the tiny eye. A pair of small, silver embroidery scissors shaped like a slender heron rests on the wooden side table, gleaming in the firelight. Clara settles back into the deep armchair, tucking her feet beneath her to stay warm. She brings the needle up through the back of the linen, the silk thread making a soft, satisfying pop as it pulls through the taut fabric. She begins a series of neat, precise satin stitches, filling in a delicate leaf with the vibrant green silk. The repetitive motion of pushing the needle down, pulling the thread taut, and bringing it back up is entirely mesmerizing. Her hands know the path by memory, her mind free to wander as she works. The brilliant color of the silk is a joyful contrast to the dark, monochromatic winter night pressing against the windows. A leaded glass window pane, divided into small diamond shapes, begins to fog slightly from the warmth of the room inside. Clara looks up from her embroidery, her eyes drawn to a subtle change in the light outside. She sets the wooden hoop down onto her lap and leans closer to the glass. There, falling softly through the beam of light cast by the hanging brass lantern outside, are the first flakes of snow. They are large and feathery, drifting down with an agonizingly slow, graceful hesitation. They touch the glass pane and instantly melt, leaving tiny, sparkling droplets of water. Clara watches, captivated by the silent descent. The anticipated moment has arrived, the sky has finally opened to blanket the world in white. A small mound of pristine white snow begins to gather on the sill of the window, slowly building against the dark wooden frame. The snowfall thickens rapidly, the individual flakes blurring into a swirling, dizzying curtain of white. Clara feels a profound sense of awe and comfort watching the storm from the safe harbor of her warm parlor. The snow seems to muffle the entire world, absorbing any distant sounds from the estate or the nearby village. The silence deepens, becoming almost tangibly a heavy, velvety quiet that wraps around the cottage. She presses her hand against the cold glass, feeling the chill seeping through her skin, reminding her of the fierce beauty of the elements from which she is completely protected. A rusted iron weather vane, shaped like a running fox, spins sluggishly on the roof above, its movement silent in the falling snow. Clara imagines the snow settling on the thatched and slated roofs of the surrounding cottages, turning the familiar landscape into a strange, beautiful dreamscape. She pictures the evergreen branches of the pine trees bowing heavily under the weight of the accumulating snow. Within the cottage, the air feels even cozier by contrast. The firelight seems brighter, the colors of the tapestries richer. She picks up her embroidery hoop once more, her heart filled with a quiet, bubbling joy. The rhythm of her stitching falls into step with the slow, swirling dance of the snowflakes outside the window. A skein of deep crimson embroidery silk lies untangled on Clara's lap, glowing like a facete ruby in the lamplight. She switches her thread, carefully tying off the green silk and threading the needle with the vibrant red. She begins to stitch a cluster of tiny, tight French knots to form a winter berry upon the linen vine. The texture of the knots is raised and pleasing to the touch, adding dimension to the flat fabric. She works in companionable silence with the cottage, the only sounds the soft pull of the thread, the crackle of the fire, and the occasional gentle thud of snow sliding off the steep pitch of the roof. The work is not hurried, it is a labor of pure love and contemplation, a way to anchor her thoughts in beauty. A small, carved wooden box with a sliding lid sits near the wicker basket, containing thimbles of silver and brass. Clara pushes her silver thimble snugly onto her middle finger, the metal warm from the heat of her hand. She uses it to gently push the needle through a particularly thick section of the linen fabric. She thinks of the women who taught her this craft: her mother, her governess, the older ladies at court. Embroidery is a silent language passed down through generations of women, a way to create lasting beauty in a fleeting world. As the snow falls heavier, burying the garden and the paths, she feels deeply connected to this lineage of quiet, creative domesticity. Her stitches are tiny testaments to patience and care. A heavy oak mantelpiece above the hearth holds a row of thick beeswax candles, though only one is currently lit. The flame of this single candle flickers slightly as a tiny, invisible draft finds its way down the chimney. The movement of the light causes the shadows in the room to sway and dance playfully across the walls. Clara pauses her work to rest her eyes, staring into the glowing heart of the fire. The logs have broken down into geometric cubes of pure, glowing heat, pulsing with an intense, fiery orange light. She feels a deep, radiating warmth penetrating her velvet robe, soothing her muscles and making her eyelids feel delightfully heavy. The combination of the warm fire and the cold, snowy night is a perfect recipe for deep relaxation. A stack of seasoned oak logs sits in a wrought iron cradle beside the hearth, waiting to be fed to the fire. Clara decides the fire has enough fuel to last until she retires, choosing instead to let it slowly bank down into embers for the night. She sets her embroidery hoop aside, carefully placing the heron-shaped scissors and the silk threads back into the wicker basket. The sense of completion is satisfying. The vine and berries on the linen look bright and joyful, a promise of life amidst the winter slumber. She stretches her arms above her head, her spine popping softly in the quiet room. A delicious wave of tiredness washes over her, a natural, heavy lethargy brought on by warmth, safety, and a quiet mind. A ceramic bowl filled with dried rose heads and clove-studded oranges rests on the sideboard, filling the air with a spicy, floral perfume. Sink deeper into the comfort of your own bed as the snow continues to fall in the dark outside. Imagine the absolute silence of a snow-covered world, where every sharp edge is softened, and every loud noise is muffled into a whisper. Let your thoughts drift like the falling snowflakes, slowly drifting down, down, down until they settle quietly on the ground. There is nothing to figure out right now, nothing to plan. Just exist in this warm, fragrant space, listening to the gentle hiss of the embers and the slow, rhythmic beating of your own peaceful heart. A beautifully crafted wooden apothecary cabinet, featuring 24 tiny drawers with brass label holders, stands in the corner of the kitchen. Clara carries the oil lamp back into the kitchen, its light casting a warm glow over the polished wood of the cabinet. The room is much cooler now, the iron stove having lost most of its heat. She opens one of the tiny drawers, the wood sliding smoothly on its runners, and a cloud of herbal fragrance greets her. Inside, dried chamomile flowers resemble tiny, faded suns. She pinches a small amount of the delicate flowers, dropping them into a small, white porcelain mortar. The ritual of preparing a sleep draught is an old, cherished habit, a way to signal to her body that the day is truly over. A heavy marble pestle rests inside the porcelain mortar, its smooth surface cool against Clara's palm. She gently crushes the chamomile flowers, moving the pestle in a slow, grinding circle. The crushing action releases the essential oils of the plant, intensifying the sweet, apple-like aroma of the herb. She opens another small drawer and retrieves a pinch of dried lemon balm leaves, adding them to the mortar. The friction of the pestle against the porcelain creates a soft, gritty sound, a satisfying, tactile task that requires no complex thought. The herbs break down into a fragrant, coarse powder. She feels like an ancient alchemist, mixing simple botanicals to summon sleep and peaceful dreams. A small copper saucepan hangs from an iron rack above the stove, gleaming softly in the lamplight. Clara takes the pan down, pouring in a small amount of fresh water from the porcelain pitcher. She moves to the parlor hearth, where the embers are still fiercely hot, and settles the small copper pan directly onto a flat rock near the coals. She tips the crushed herbs from the mortar into the water, watching as they float on the surface before slowly becoming saturated and sinking. The water begins to heat almost immediately, tiny bubbles forming at the edges of the pan. She stirs the mixture slowly with a long wooden spoon, watching the water turn a pale, golden yellow. The herbal steam rising from the pan is immensely comforting, filling her lungs with calm. A small, clear glass jar of dark amber honey sits on the kitchen table, catching the lamplight like a trapped jewel. Clara uses a thick cloth to lift the hot copper pan from the hearth, carrying it carefully to the table. She places a fine mesh silver strainer over a fresh teacup and pours the golden liquid through. The wet herbs collect in the strainer, leaving a perfectly clear, fragrant draught in the cup. She dips a silver spoon into the jar of honey, the thick, viscous liquid winding around the bowl of the spoon in a slow, golden ribbon. She stirs the honey into the hot chamomile tea, the spoon clinking rhythmically against the porcelain sides of the cup until the honey is completely dissolved. A small, dried bundle of sage hangs near the back door, gently turning in a non-existent breeze. Clara holds the warm cup of honeyed chamomile in both hands, taking a slow, cautious sip. The liquid is hot, sweet, and profoundly soothing, coating her throat with the floral warmth of the herbs. She walks slowly back to the parlor window, her velvet robe swishing softly against the floorboards. The snow is falling even heavier now, a relentless, mesmerizing blizzard of thick, white flakes. The world beyond the windowpane has vanished entirely, replaced by a wall of swirling white. The isolation is complete, and it is a beautiful, deeply reassuring feeling. She is safely cocooned in her own private universe of warmth and light. A thick, woolen draft excluder, shaped like a long, sleeping dachshund, lies at the base of the heavy oak front door. Clara takes another sip of her tea, letting the warmth radiate through her chest. She imagines the woodland creatures outside, the foxes curled tight in their dens, the owls huddled in the hollows of the ancient oak trees, all seeking shelter from the snow. She feels a profound kinship with them, safely tucked away in her own cozy burrow. She finishes the tea, the sweet taste of honey lingering pleasantly on her tongue. The sleep draught works its gentle magic quickly, a familiar heaviness settling behind her eyes and relaxing the muscles in her neck and shoulders. A small, woven basket filled with pine cones sits near the hearth, the scales of the cones tightly closed against the indoor warmth. Clara places her empty teacup on the table, wiping a stray drop from the rim with her thumb. She begins the slow, deliberate process of putting the cottage to bed. She walks over to the parlor window, reaching up to unhook the heavy, velvet curtains. She pulls the thick, plum-colored fabric across the glass, the brass ring sliding with a soft, scraping sound along the wooden curtain pole. The closing of the curtains instantly transforms the room, shutting out the cold glass and making the space feel even smaller, warmer, and more intimate. A plush, tasseled tie-back dangles loosely against the wall, its silk threads reflecting the fading light of the fire. With the curtains drawn, the parlor is illuminated solely by the deep red glow of the dying fire and the single, gentle oil lamp. Clara takes an iron fire poker, its handle worn smooth by years of use, and gently shifts the remaining logs. The embers crackle and hiss softly, a shower of tiny orange sparks flying up into the dark chimney before vanishing. She uses an ash shovel to push a mound of grey ash over the hottest coals, banking the fire so it will smolder safely through the night and provide a warm hearth in the morning. The heat radiating from the ashes is like a soft, physical blanket against her skin. A brass snuffer with a long wooden handle rests on the mantelpiece beside a small, unlit candle. Clara reaches for the snuffer, lowering the hollow brass bell over the single beeswax candle that still burns on the mantel. The flame is extinguished instantly, without a trace of smoke, leaving only the scent of warm wax in the air. She moves to the oil lamp on the table, turning the small brass dial to slowly lower the wick. The warm, golden light recedes steadily, shrinking down until it is nothing more than a tiny, glowing seed of fire. With a quick puff of breath, she blows out the lamp. The parlor is plunged into near darkness, illuminated only by the faint, ruby-red glow escaping from the banked ashes in the hearth. A pale sliver of moonlight attempts to pierce through the heavy velvet curtains, completely obscured by the thick, falling snow outside. Close your eyes and envision the profound, comforting darkness of the cottage. The day's light has faded completely, leaving a space purely dedicated to rest. Let the darkness soothe your eyes, wrapping around you like a soft, heavy quilt. Listen to the absolute silence of the snow, a quiet so deep it feels like a physical presence in the room. Release the tension in your jaw, let your shoulders drop, and allow your body to become completely heavy and relaxed. You are transitioning from the waking world into the peaceful, boundless realm of sleep. Breathe slowly. Breathe deeply. A beautifully polished wooden banister, worn smooth by countless hands over decades, curves gently upwards towards the bedchamber. Clara stands at the base of the stairs, a single taper candle held securely in a brass chamber stick. The small, unprotected flame dances slightly as she moves, casting long, wavering shadows that stretch tall against the stairwell walls. She begins her ascent, her velvet-clad feet making no sound on the carpeted treads. The air grows slightly cooler as she leaves the direct heat of the parlor hearth, a refreshing change that signals the final stage of her evening routine. She climbs slowly, feeling the comforting, familiar fatigue deep in her bones. Each step takes her further away from the waking hours and closer to the soft embrace of her bed. A small window halfway up the stairwell, left uncurtained, reveals the swirling maelstrom of white snowflakes dancing in the dark. Clara pauses on the landing, holding her candle up to the glass. The snowflakes illuminate briefly as they pass through the faint beam of candlelight, flashing like tiny falling stars before vanishing back into the night. The windowpane is freezing cold, a stark boundary between the freezing tempest outside and the safe, warm haven within. She watches the snow for a long moment, hypnotized by the chaotic, yet silent, beauty of the storm. The wind has picked up slightly, howling a low, mournful tune around the eaves of the roof, a sound that only serves to make the interior of the cottage feel more secure. A woven woolen rug, dyed in deep shades of indigo and madder red, covers the floorboards of the upstairs hallway. Clara turns away from the window, continuing her quiet journey down the short hallway toward her bedchamber. The floorboards creak softly under her weight, a familiar, comforting sound that the house makes in response to her presence. The shadows cast by her candle flutter wildly, playing hide-and-seek among the door frames and wainscoting. She reaches the door to her bedroom, the latch clicking with a sharp, precise sound as she presses her thumb against the iron thumb-piece. She pushes the door open, the heavy wood swinging silently on its well-oiled iron hinges, welcoming her into the inner sanctum of her home. A large porcelain wash basin, decorated with a faded pattern of blue willow trees, sits atop a sturdy oak washstand. Clara enters the bedchamber, placing her brass chamber stick onto the bedside table. The room is chilled, the air crisp and clean, smelling faintly of the lavender sachets tucked into her drawers. She moves to the washstand, pouring the remaining warm water from the hot water bottle into the porcelain basin. The steam rises gently, carrying the scent of the knitted wool cover. She unwraps a fresh bar of milled soap, the hard, creamy oval smelling strongly of oatmeal and honey. She dips her hands into the warm water, the soothing heat an immediate comfort to her slightly chilled fingers. A thick, white cotton towel hangs on a wooden rail beside the washstand, its fabric slightly rough and invigorating. Clara lathers the oatmeal soap between her palms, creating a rich, creamy foam. She splashes the warm, soapy water over her face, washing away the last invisible remnants of the day. The water is incredibly soothing, a gentle caress against her skin. She rinses her face thoroughly with the clear water, the temperature now lukewarm but still refreshing. She buries her face in the thick cotton towel, patting her skin dry. The simple act of washing is a profound, grounding ritual, a final cleansing of the mind and body before surrendering to the night. She feels incredibly clean, incredibly relaxed, and entirely ready for sleep. A small, silver-capped jar of cold cream sits on the dressing table, catching the faint, flickering light of the candle. Clara opens the jar, scooping a small amount of the rich, thick cream onto her fingertips. She massages the cream into the skin of her face and neck using slow, upward strokes. The cream is heavy and luxurious, smelling faintly of almonds and rosewater, providing a deeply moisturizing barrier against the dry winter air. She takes her time, pressing her fingertips gently into the muscles of her jaw and forehead, releasing any lingering tension. The repetitive, circular motions are intensely calming, a soothing massage that readies her features for hours of relaxed, undisturbed rest. A delicate silver chain, holding a tiny, intricate locket, rests against the soft white cotton of Clara's nightgown. She unclasped the locket, the tiny clasp clicking softly in the quiet room. She places the necklace carefully into a velvet-lined jewelry box on the dressing table. She unties the heavy silk sash of her plum-colored velvet dressing gown, letting the rich fabric slip from her shoulders. She drapes the gown carefully over the back of a wooden chair, smoothing out the fold so it will be unwrinkled and ready for her in the cold morning. Standing in just her long, white cotton nightgown, she feels completely unencumbered, light, and free. The high neck and long sleeves of the nightgown provide perfect, simple warmth. A heavy, hand-stitched patchwork quilt, rich in deep jewel tones, is folded neatly at the foot of the brass bed. Clara approaches the bed, pulling back the thick feather eiderdown and the crisp white sheets. The bed looks incredibly inviting, a deep, soft nest designed for absolute comfort. She reaches for the knitted hot water bottle, which she had filled earlier and placed between the sheets. She slips it down to the foot of the bed, ensuring her feet will be met with toasty warmth when she climbs in. The sheets are cool to the touch at the edges, but the center of the bed is a pocket of concentrated, cozy heat. She places her hand flat against the mattress, testing the perfect, welcoming warmth. A pair of soft, white woolen bed socks sits neatly folded on the edge of the mattress. Clara sits on the side of the bed, the springs creaking softly, a gentle, musical sound. She pulls the woolen socks over her feet, the soft, fuzzy yarn instantly warming her toes. She swings her legs up onto the mattress, sliding down beneath the heavy layers of blankets. The weight of the eiderdown and the patchwork quilt settling over her is magnificent, a reassuring, physical pressure that instantly calms her nervous system. She pulls the sheets up to her chin, creating a perfect seal against the cool air of the bedchamber. She lies perfectly still on her back, savoring the incredible comfort of her warm, secure bed. A single, pure white feather escapes from the edge of the eiderdown, resting softly on the dark pattern of the quilt. Feel the comforting weight of your own blankets pressing gently down upon you, a safe and secure embrace. Imagine the sensation of sinking deeply into a soft feather mattress, your body entirely supported and relaxed. Let your legs become heavy, your arms become heavy, your head resting completely weightless on the pillow. The snow is falling steadily outside, burying the world in a profound, hushed silence. You are completely safe inside this warm cocoon. Let your breath rise and fall in a slow, steady rhythm, matching the gentle, invisible descent of the snowflakes outside your window. Drift deeper into this quiet comfort. A thick, feather-stuffed pillow, encased in a cool, starched linen slip, cradles Clara's head. She turns slightly onto her side, adjusting the pillow until it perfectly supports her neck and shoulders. The linen is crisp against her cheek, a tactile pleasure that feels clean and fresh. She reaches out from beneath the warm blankets, her arm feeling the chill of the room, to adjust the position of the brass chamber stick on the bedside table. The candle has burned down slightly, its flame steady and bright in the still air. The light casts a warm, golden circle on the ceiling, illuminating the faint, repetitive pattern of tiny roses on the wallpaper. She stares up at the illuminated roses, letting her eyes lose focus. A small leather-bound diary, its pages edged in faded gold leaf, rests on the nightstand beside the candle. Clara often writes in it before sleep, but tonight, her mind is too wonderfully slow, too beautifully blank, to form sentences. She prefers instead to simply lie still and reflect on the day. The journey from the grand estate, the cold walk through the woods, the lighting of the fire, the simple cup of tea, each moment feels like a precious, quiet victory of domestic peace. She feels a profound sense of gratitude for this small, humble cottage. It is a sanctuary where she can simply be Clara, stripped of her titles and duties, entirely at peace with her own company and the quiet turning of the seasons. A heavy wooden wardrobe stands in the corner of the room, its dark oak doors completely closed and silent. Clara listens intently to the sounds of the cottage. The wind has died down entirely, leaving behind the absolute, deadened silence of a heavy snowstorm. Occasionally, there is the incredibly soft, almost imperceptible sound of snow brushing against the window glass, a sound like a soft whisper. The old house settles around her, a microscopic shift of timber or a faint settling of stone, sounds so familiar they are deeply comforting. It is the sound of a strong, old structure holding fast against the winter, protecting the life inside. She feels a deep, abiding affection for the cottage, treating it almost as a living, breathing companion. A delicate silver pocket watch, suspended from a wooden stand on the dresser, ticks with a tiny, incredibly faint, rapid rhythm. The sound of the watch is so subtle that Clara can only hear it when she concentrates perfectly. It is a tiny, mechanical heartbeat in the large, quiet room. She matches her breathing to the frantic, tiny ticking, but in reverse, drawing out her inhales and exhales to be as slow and elongated as possible, a counter-rhythm to the watch. Breathe in slowly, pause, breathe out slowly. The exercise is deeply hypnotic. She feels her heart rate slowing down, matching the leisurely, unhurried pace of her breathing. The physical sensation of relaxation spreads from her chest outward, down her arms to her fingertips, and down her legs to her toes. A small, framed watercolor painting of a summer landscape hangs crookedly near the door, its bright greens muted in the candlelight. Clara's heavy eyelids droop, closing for a moment before fluttering open again. The candlelight feels warm and gentle against her retinas. She traces the faint outline of the painted trees in the dim light, remembering the heat of the sun on the day the painting was made. The memory is pleasant, but distant, entirely overshadowed by the immediate, overwhelming comfort of the cold winter night and her warm bed. The contrast between the freezing temperatures outside and the luxurious warmth under the blankets is a delicious tension that makes the bed feel even softer, even more inviting. She wriggles slightly, nestling deeper into the mattress. A brass handle on the bedside table drawer gleams with a dull, muted shine. Clara decides it is nearly time to extinguish the light. She watches the candle flame intently. The tiny teardrop of fire dances slightly, consuming the wick and turning the hard beeswax into a small pool of clear, liquid gold. She marvels at the simple, ancient technology of the candle, a tiny captive sun bringing light into the dark winter night. The flame is mesmerizing, a singular point of focus in the quiet, shadowy room. She feels a deep wave of drowsiness wash over her brain, a heavy, foggy feeling that makes thought impossible and unnecessary. The edge of sleep is approaching, soft and welcoming. A small pair of iron wick trimmers rests beside the base of the brass chamber stick. Clara brings her hand out from beneath the covers one last time. The air in the room has grown noticeably colder since she first entered, which only makes the retreat beneath the eiderdown more satisfying. She picks up the brass snuffer, preparing to extinguish her only source of light. She hesitates for one final moment, taking in the cozy, lamplit details of her bedchamber floral wallpaper, the dark wood furniture, the rich colors of the quilt. It is a perfect, peaceful scene. With a slow, deliberate movement, she lowers the brass bell over the candle flame. The light vanishes instantly, plunging the room into absolute, velvety darkness. A faint, ghostly luminescence emanates from the snow outside, filtering weakly through the uncurtained top panes of the window. With the candle gone, Clara's eyes slowly adjust to the dark. The room is not pitch black, it is painted in infinite shades of deep charcoal and soft, muted grey. The snow outside acts as a massive reflector, catching whatever ambient starlight penetrates the clouds and casting a weak, ethereal glow into the room. She can just make out the dark, rectangular shape of the window frame against the slightly lighter glass. The darkness is incredibly soothing, a heavy, soft curtain that drops over her senses, signaling to her brain that all activity must cease. The night has officially taken hold. A heavy, knitted woolen blanket is pulled up to rest perfectly just beneath Clara's chin. The heat from the hot water bottle at her feet has radiated upward, creating a perfect, consistent column of warmth throughout the bed. She is completely cocooned, surrounded by layers of soft cotton, heavy wool, and downy feathers. She takes a deep breath, inhaling the crisp, cold air of the room, and exhales a long, slow sigh. The sound of her own breathing is loud in her ears, a steady, rhythmic rush of air. She focuses entirely on this sound, using it as an anchor to prevent her mind from wandering. Inhale, a cool rush. Exhale, a warm release. The cycle is endlessly repeating, infinitely calming. A small, frost-covered spiderweb clings to the outside corner of the window pane, trembling imperceptibly. Let go of the final threads of your waking day. You have followed Clara into the deep, quiet comfort of her winter cottage. The fire is banked, the doors are locked, the candles are out. There is nothing left to do but surrender to the heavy, peaceful pull of sleep. Feel the darkness wrapping around you, a protective, silent cloak. Listen to the steady, reassuring rhythm of your own breath, matching it to the slow, invisible falling of the snow. You are completely relaxed. You are entirely safe. Let your mind drift on a calm, dark sea of rest, sinking deeper and deeper into tranquility. A dark, heavy wardrobe stands silently in the corner, its massive oak frame blending completely into the shadows. Clara lies perfectly still, her body feeling incredibly heavy, as if she were sinking slowly through the mattress. The physical sensation of her limbs has almost entirely faded, replaced by a warm, floating numbness. Her conscious mind is slowly unspooling, the clear, rational thoughts of the day breaking apart into soft, abstract fragments of imagery. She sees the flash of green embroidery silk, tastes the sweet honey of the chamomile tea, feels the rough bark of the birch logs. The memories swirl together, a gentle, kaleidoscopic dreamscape that requires no effort to watch. She is merely an observer now, drifting passively toward sleep. A single, pale beam of moonlight finally pierces a small break in the heavy snow clouds, illuminating a patch of the wooden floor. The faint light highlights the dust motes dancing slowly in the cold air of the bedroom. Clara does not open her eyes to see it, but she can sense the slight shift in the darkness through her closed eyelids. She embraces the shifting shadows, allowing her mind to wander through the quiet, snow-covered estate in her imagination. She imagines the grand house, entirely dark and silent, its many chimneys capped with thick white snow. She imagines the quiet gardens, the sleeping plants tucked safely beneath the frozen earth, waiting patiently for the distant spring. The thought of this massive, quiet slumber is deeply comforting. A tiny, perfect snowflake lands softly against the dark glass of the window, remaining whole for a long moment before melting. Clara's breathing has slowed to a deep, resonant rhythm. The air enters her nose, cold and sharp, and fills her lungs, expanding her chest against the heavy blankets. She holds the breath for a fraction of a second, a moment of perfect, suspended stillness, before releasing it in a long, slow, warm sigh. This rhythm is the only movement in the room. She is completely anchored in the present moment, entirely focused on the simple, vital act of breathing. The world outside the cottage has ceased to exist, there is only this bed, this room, this breath. A heavy iron latch on the bedroom door rests securely in its keep, a symbol of utter safety and seclusion. Clara feels a profound sense of security. The thick stone walls of the cottage, the heavy wooden doors, the layers of blankets, they all form a series of protective barriers between her and the harsh winter world. She knows that she will not be disturbed, that the morning is far away, and that she has hours of uninterrupted peace stretching out before her. This knowledge is a luxurious gift. She lets go of any remaining tension in her body, a conscious release of the tiny muscles in her hands and feet. Her body goes completely slack, entirely surrendered to gravity. A soft, rhythmic shifting sound comes from the parlor directly below, as a large log finally collapses into the soft ash. The sound travels faintly through the floorboards, muffled and distant. Clara registers the noise dimly, interpreting it correctly as the dying breath of the fire she built. It is a comforting sound, a reminder of the warm hearth that anchors the house below her. She pictures the glowing red embers buried deep within the grey ash, holding on to their heat against the cold. The image is warm and soothing. She feels a sympathetic warmth glowing deep within her own chest, a radiant, peaceful energy that slowly permeates her entire body. A perfectly smooth, white porcelain pitcher gleams faintly in the shadows on the washstand, its surface cold and flawless. Clara's mind begins to drift away from the physical details of the room. The transition into sleep is a slow, gradual fading of awareness. The boundaries of her physical body seem to soften and blur, blending with the softness of the bed beneath her. She feels as though she is floating on a calm, dark river, the gentle current carrying her slowly downstream. The water is smooth and silent, winding its way through a dark, peaceful forest. She does not try to steer or paddle, she simply lets the current take her, trusting that it will guide her safely to a place of deep rest. A silver-backed hairbrush lies entirely motionless on the dressing table, its bristles catching a tiny glint of ambient light. As Clara floats down the imaginary river, the images in her mind become more abstract, more dreamlike. She sees the colors of her embroidery threads blending together into a wash of soft light. She hears the faint, musical chime of the porcelain teacup, a sound that stretches and echoes pleasantly in her mind. The sensory details of the day are being carefully filed away, transformed from memories into the raw material of dreams. She feels a gentle, pleasant heaviness pressing down on her forehead, a soothing pressure that smooths away any remaining wrinkles of thought. A thick, heavy velvet curtain covers the parlor window downstairs, trapping the remaining warmth within the silent room. The entire cottage feels as though it is holding its breath, a deep, structural sigh of relief as the night fully takes over. Clara is part of this silent house, a vital but quiet component of its restful state. Her consciousness is like the flame of an oil lamp that has been turned down to the lowest possible setting, still burning, still present, but barely illuminating anything at all. She exists in a state of pure, peaceful twilight, halfway between waking and sleeping, a deeply comfortable limbo where time has no meaning. A single drop of water from melted snow falls from the eaves outside, landing softly in the deep snowbank below. The tiny, muffled thwomp of the droplet is the only sound in the frozen landscape. Clara's breathing matches the slow, irregular dripping of the melting snow. Inhale. Exhale. A long, empty pause. Inhale. Exhale. Her body is performing the mechanics of life with perfect, quiet efficiency, requiring no input from her conscious mind. She is completely, entirely relaxed. The muscles of her face are soft and slack, her jaw is unclenched, her hands lie loosely at her sides. She is a picture of absolute, undisturbed repose, a woman completely at peace in her winter sanctuary. A dark, quiet corner of the ceiling gathers the deepest shadows of the room, an abyss of soft, comforting blackness. Let your mind become as quiet as this darkened corner. If a thought arises, simply observe it without interacting, and let it drift away like a snowflake melting on a warm windowpane. You are entirely enveloped in a soft, heavy blanket of peace. The stillness of the snowstorm outside is matched by the stillness within your own body. Feel the deep, slow rhythm of your chest rising and falling. With every exhale, sink a millimeter deeper into your mattress. With every exhale, let go of the waking world entirely. You are safe, you are warm, and you are ready for deep sleep. A thick blanket of pure white snow covers the slate roof of the cottage, providing a dense, natural layer of insulation against the cold. The sheer weight of the snow presses down gently on the house, settling it firmly into its foundations. Inside, Clara is completely motionless. Her breathing is the only sign of life, a slow, incredibly steady, rhythmic tide. She is diving deeper into the stages of sleep, moving past the light, dreamlike state into a profound, restorative slumber. The world outside, with its storms and cold winds, is a million miles away. Her consciousness has retreated deep inward, into a warm, dark, protected core. A smooth, polished wooden floorboard runs alongside the bed, waiting to be stepped upon in the distant morning. Clara's mind is entirely quiet now. The thoughts and images that had swirled softly through her twilight state have stilled, leaving behind a vast, dark, empty space. It is a comfortable emptiness, a void devoid of anxiety or stress. It is the perfect blank canvas of deep sleep. Her body temperature has dropped slightly, perfectly regulated by the heavy layers of blankets and the warm hot water bottle at her feet. She is existing in a state of perfect physical homeostasis, her body quietly repairing and resting itself. A pale, faded floral pattern on the wallpaper repeats endlessly across the walls, completely invisible in the dark room. The silence in the room is absolute. It is a heavy, thick silence, a physical substance that fills the space between the furniture and the walls. The snow outside acts as an acoustic dampener, absorbing all ambient noise from the world. There are no distant dogs barking, no carts on the road, no wind rattling the glass. There is only a pure, unbroken quiet. Clara's sleeping mind bathes in this silence, finding immense relief in the lack of sensory input. The silence is a healing balm for a mind that has been busy all day. A small brass key sits forgotten in the lock of the wooden wardrobe, pointing downwards towards the floor. The hours of the night stretch out ahead, a long, uninterrupted expanse of dark time. Clara is completely unaware of the passage of time. For her, the night is a single, continuous moment of rest. The slow, deep rhythm of her breathing is the only clock that matters. The cottage holds her safely, a sturdy, warm shell protecting its sleeping occupant. The cold air presses against the stone walls outside, but the heat of the banked fire below radiates upward, maintaining a perfect, delicate balance of temperature. A heavy iron grate in the parlor hearth perfectly cradles the grey ashes, containing the hidden, glowing embers within. Downstairs, the heat pulses softly in the absolute dark. Upstairs, Clara's chest rises and falls with the exact same slow, rhythmic pulse. The house and the woman are breathing together, perfectly synchronized in their winter rest. The profound stillness is almost sacred. It is the peace of a world that has paused, a world that has wrapped itself in white and gone to sleep until the sun returns. Clara's deep sleep is a reflection of this natural, seasonal pause. A soft, knitted woolen blanket rests heavily over Clara's feet, its fibers locking in the warmth. The deep stages of sleep bring total physical relaxation. Every muscle, every tendon, every nerve is completely at rest. Her hands, which work so carefully with the delicate embroidery silk, are now loosely curled on the crisp sheets. Her eyes, which strain to read the faint handwriting of her friend's letter, are relaxed and still behind her closed eyelids. Her body is taking full advantage of this protected time, absorbing the rest it needs to face the cold, bright morning that will eventually come. A tiny, decorative brass knob on the dresser drawer reflects an impossibly faint glimmer of ambient darkness. The snow continues to fall outside, entirely soundless, an infinite number of tiny crystals piling up against the stone walls and the wooden doors. The storm is burying the cottage, hiding it away from the world. Clara is safe inside her hidden sanctuary, lost in the deepest depths of sleep. Her mind is completely dark, a calm, vast ocean without a single ripple. She is entirely surrendered to the night, entirely removed from the waking world. A sturdy wooden chair beside the door holds the soft, plum-colored velvet dressing gown, waiting patiently in the dark. The fabric of the gown is heavy and still. Everything in the room is perfectly still. The air itself seems motionless, heavy with the cold and the quiet. Clara's slow breathing does not disturb the stillness, it merely accents it, a necessary, rhythmic undercurrent. The deep, restorative sleep she is experiencing is a profound gift, a vital necessity. It is the body's way of hitting the reset button, of clearing away the fatigue of the day and preparing for the next. A beautifully carved wooden bedpost rises tall in the darkness, a sturdy pillar supporting the invisible canopy of the night. Clara's sleep is uninterrupted and profound. She does not stir. She does not turn. She lies perfectly still, her face soft and relaxed, her breath a slow, even metronome. The deep winter night is her protector, wrapping the cottage in an impenetrable layer of cold and snow, ensuring that no one and nothing will disturb her rest. The isolation of the cottage, which might be daunting to some, is precisely what makes this deep, peaceful sleep possible. A perfectly folded white linen handkerchief lies inside a dark, closed drawer, smelling faintly of dried lavender. Let yourself sink entirely into the profound stillness of the cottage. The night is deep, the snow is heavy, and the silence is absolute. Allow your breath to become as slow and steady as Clara's. Feel the heavy, comforting weight of your blankets anchoring you to the mattress. Let your mind empty completely, becoming as dark and peaceful as the snow-covered night. There is absolutely nothing left to do, nowhere left to be. Just rest. Just breathe. Let the gentle, invisible tide of deep sleep carry you away. A dark, windowless corner of the room holds only the soft, ambient chill of the winter night air. Clara's breathing is incredibly slow now, the deep, resonant rhythm of complete physical surrender. The inhales are drawn out, taking in the cool air, and the exhales are long, warm, and entirely relaxed. Her body is completely heavy, sinking into the soft feather mattress. The silence in the room is a physical presence, a heavy, soft blanket that wraps around her consciousness. She is entirely safe, entirely warm, and entirely asleep. The night stretches on, a vast, dark, peaceful expanse. A single, invisible snowflake joins millions of others on the heavy slate roof, making absolutely no sound as it lands. The accumulation of the snow is a slow, steady, silent process, much like the deepening of Clara's sleep. The outside world is completely muffled, completely still. Inside, the only movement is the incredibly slow rise and fall of Clara's chest beneath the heavy quilt. The rhythm is hypnotic, a natural lullaby. Inhale. Exhale. A long pause. The darkness is thick and comforting. The cottage is a tiny, warm spark of life in the middle of a frozen, silent wilderness. A solid oak floorboard beneath the bed holds the weight of the heavy brass frame in absolute silence. The stillness is profound. Clara is completely lost to the waking world, wandering through the deep, formless landscapes of restorative sleep. The cool air of the room touches her face, a gentle reminder of the cold outside, making the warmth beneath the blankets feel even more luxurious. She does not move. The muscles in her arms and legs are completely slack. Her mind is at peace. The long, quiet night continues its slow, majestic turning. A delicate, lace-trimmed collar of the white cotton nightgown rests softly against Clara's throat, rising and falling slightly with her breath. Her breathing is the anchor, the only constant in the silent room. It is a slow, steady wave, washing softly against the shores of sleep. In. Out. In. Out. The rhythm is endlessly repeating, infinitely soothing. The absolute darkness of the room hides all details, leaving only this slow, rhythmic sound. The snow continues to fall outside, a silent, swirling curtain of white. The cottage remains perfectly still, a warm, safe cocoon. A heavy, woven woolen rug beside the bed lies flat and still, its thick fibers absorbing the cold from the floorboards. The night is at its deepest, darkest point. The embers in the hearth downstairs have cooled to a dull, faint red glow, hidden beneath a thick layer of grey ash. The entire cottage is asleep. Clara's sleep is deep and undisturbed. She is completely enveloped in warmth and silence. The slow, rhythmic sound of her breathing is a gentle, reassuring presence in the dark. The world has paused, taking a long, deep breath before the dawn. A small, dark iron latch on the window frame remains tightly secured, holding back the winter cold. Clara does not stir. Her sleep is heavy and profound. The physical sensation of the bed is gone, replaced by a feeling of weightless floating. She is drifting on a dark, quiet sea of rest. The slow, steady rhythm of her breath is the only compass. The silence of the snowstorm is absolute, a thick, heavy quiet that presses gently against the walls of the cottage. The night is completely peaceful. She is entirely safe. A soft, feather-filled pillow perfectly supports the weight of Clara's sleeping head, its linen casing smooth and cool. The rhythm of her breathing continues, incredibly slow, incredibly steady. Inhale. Exhale. The darkness is a comforting embrace, hiding the world away. The snow falls silently, a ceaseless, gentle descent of white flakes. The cottage stands firm, a warm, secure haven. Clara is lost in the depths of sleep, her body resting, her mind at peace. The long, silent night slowly ticks by, unmarked by any clock, measured only by the slow, rhythmic pulse of her breath. A thick, heavy patchwork quilt lies completely motionless over the sleeping figure, its intricate stitches invisible in the dark. The stillness in the room is absolute, a profound, heavy silence. Clara's slow, rhythmic breathing is the only sound, a gentle, hypnotic pulse. In. Out. In. Out. The cold air, the warm bed, the dark room, the falling snow all combine to create a perfect environment for deep, restorative sleep. She is completely relaxed, entirely surrendered to the night. The peace of the cottage is absolute, a quiet sanctuary in a frozen world. A single, pale, unlit beeswax candle stands tall on the bedside table, a silent sentinel in the dark. The darkness is soft and velvety, a comforting weight on the eyes. Clara's sleep is impossibly deep, her breathing a slow, steady whisper. The silent snow continues its gentle fall outside, blanketing the earth in a thick, white quilt. The cottage is a warm, safe secret hidden in the winter woods. She rests completely, her body heavy, her mind empty and peaceful. The gentle rhythm of the night goes on, slow, quiet, and endlessly calm. A dark, quiet room holds entirely still, wrapped in the profound silence of a heavy winter snowfall. Clara sleeps, safe and warm beneath her heavy blankets, her breath a slow, rhythmic tide. Inhale slowly. Exhale gently. The world outside is frozen and white, but within these walls, there is only perfect, peaceful darkness. Let the gentle rhythm of her breathing guide you into the final, deepest stages of sleep. You are safe. You are warm. You are entirely at peace. Let go completely, and drift away into the quiet, snow-covered night. Sleep. 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 And so, dear friend, our gentle journey comes to a close. Thank you so very much for spending this peaceful evening with us. We hope this story has brought you comfort, warmth, and the sweetest rest. Until next time, sleep well, and know that another cozy tale awaits you soon. Good night.